Hello, everyone. Welcome to acuCONNECT 2025. For those of you who this isn't your first session, thanks for attending, and those who took time out of their day to attend. I'm so happy to have you here. My name is Blake Rockwell. I'm the technical sales team lead here at Rockton Software, and I'm so excited to present with you today a little high-level overview about Rockton Pricing Management and how we might be different than the way you're used to handling your pricing. For everyone who's here who has not seen us before, we are an ISV, an independent software provider. We work with Acumatica to help them with the pricing module and make it just do a lot of things that most ERPs can't do. And so we give you that full flexibility. We've been creating products that help you work simpler and easier inside of your ERP system since 1999. We've got a team of 13 wonderful team members, and we all work virtually all over the United States, as far as Georgia on the East Coast, and then on the West Coast, all the way over to the Seattle area. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into what we have to talk about today. I also have posted a poll question. So if you wouldn't mind answering that, go ahead. I'm just curious to hear a little bit about people who are here. If you are having challenges with pricing, what challenges are those? I'd love to just hear a little bit more. And if you don't see your answer down there, feel free to type in the chat. All right, well, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about pricing and how Rockton Pricing Management is different than the traditional way of managing pricing. So we're going to take a look at the way many of you may be doing pricing today. This is kind of the bread and butter way most mom and pop shops are doing businesses, and then you get into enterprise level and people are still doing business this way. And this is how it looks. Effectively, you have some number of items. In this case, we have a hardware store, and they sell things like crowbars and hammers and tapes and pliers and all that sort of stuff. Of course, they have to store in their accounting system somewhere the cost of these items or a list price, but they effectively have one list of numbers and items. Then they have to figure out how much they want to sell their items for. In this example, we're going to sell our items for a 32% markup. 32% margin, guaranteeing that the selling price of this 32% of that gives us profit, and the remainder is the cost. So you throw up Excel, you load up these numbers, you write a quick margin calculation, you get that over here, and you export it back in. Not so hard, right? Pretty simple and easy. In this simple example, if you have 10 items, you are now manually managing 10 prices. Of course, this is simple and easy only because we're doing one simple margin adjustment, and then we only have 10 items. I'm sure most of you guys have many customers, many items, and you have intricacies to this pricing you've set up. And so it's not just a flat 32 for everyone. It varies a lot. And so these lists can get really complicated, which is where we're going to get to here later. Now, Rockton Pricing Management is completely different than any other pricing management system you might have looked at before. We, in fact, do not store any prices at all. Well, how could we handle pricing if we don't store prices? Great question. We actually store rules. We are effectively a rule calculator. And so you can feed us any piece of data from Acumatica. You feed it into our engine and tell us why that data is driving a pricing decision. And then we make that decision happen when that condition is met. So in this case, rather than storing 10 prices for 10 items, we can just store one rule. And that rule is no matter what the item or customer is, we are going to take the cost and we are going to apply a 32% margin, and that will be the final price. And so now, instead of storing 10 records for just 10 its, or if you had 1,000 items, you'd have 1,000 records. With RPM, we just store one record. It's just one global rule. We don't have to have any redundancy in data when it's all the same, right? And so that's a great thing. Is we're able to reduce a bunch of redundancy and group our like items, and it makes price management a lot easier. But you're still able to do those exceptions and all of that one-off and complicated pricing you might want to do. For example, you may have customer discounts. That's a common one to do, right? You've got all your customers, and some of them get a special price, some of them get a super special price, other of them get a small discount, and then everyone else just pays your normal retail. So your retail customers might go into a store like Home Depot and pay $14.51 for a crowbar, whereas maybe a gold level, a great distributor, is going to pay much less, $12.33 per unit, and so on, all the way, silver 10% and bronze 5%. So how can we handle a retail price list, but then also having a conditional discount based on the customer loyalty level, if they're gold, silver, bronze, or none of the above. So that's again where Rockton Pricing Management comes in. And as long as we have readable data, which in this case we do, we have the customer loyalty level, we can just write a rule. So here's how that exact same scenario looks in Rockton Pricing Management. I'm going to switch back really quick. We have those 10 prices that we're managing now, 40 records, 40 physical numbers we are managing in a spreadsheet. Of course, if you have 1,000, this would be 4,000, et cetera. It just gets exponentially harder to manage. With RPM, regardless if you have 1, 10, or 1,000,000 items, you only are managing 4 records with that exact same scenario. So we're going to go ahead and do our 32% margin. That's for all items and all customers. Cool. Now we're going to give a conditional discount. And this discount is based on this level, the customer loyalty level. We're going to read that data point inside of Acumatica. Oh, this customer is gold. They're given a 15% off. Cool. And then if they're nothing, it just ignores this. So a normal customer will pay just a flat 32. A bronze would automatically calculate that price with 5% off, silver 10, and gold 15, and so on. And so you never have to come in here and update your prices or change anything unless you want to change these margin numbers. So next year when your costs change, since we're basing on costs, so do your prices. Makes it a lot easier to manage. You never have to go in there and update based on cost because we're just pulling that cost field, doing a rule-based calculation. Now, you think of it, we can make it happen, but some examples of some complexity you might add on beyond this is shipping zones. We were at 40 records before. Say you have 8 UPS ship zones. Cool. Depending on where you are located in the United States, is kind of a US focus, but I'm sure no matter where you are, you're paying different amounts of shipping based on how far you're shipping your items. Now we have a ship zone for our gold discount, a ship price for our silver, and for our bronze. And so each of these needs to have a price per zone. And then of course, one zone price per the discount level. And so suddenly we're now from 40 records, multiply that by those 8 ship zones. We're now managing 320 manual prices when that all could be handled in RPM with just 12 records. And so why handle 32 times the number of records you need to, right? So in this case, we're just going to pass in a margin, that same conditional discount, and then again, we're going to feed it some more data. In this case, we'll take the ship to location or the ship from or the warehouse, some sort of data that already exists in Acumatica. We set up a rule. For example, if the UPS ship zone, zone 1 is the location it's shipping to, we'll add 4% and 6% for 2 and so on up to zone 8 at 34. Now we'll just automatically calculate that. Wherever it's shipping to, it adds that fee. Boom, you're done. So that whole scenario is managed with just 12 records. You want to have a sale, take all 320 of those prices. You got to do a sale price. Say it's March and they're getting 10% off. Cool, double that. 320 is now 640 records. You kind of get where I'm going here, but it gets very complicated very quickly. Here's that same scenario in Rockton Pricing Management. We just put a condition here. If the date is on between March 1st and March 31st, apply 10% off. Otherwise, don't do any additional math. So all of this is unchanged, right? We're just adding this extra condition. And if it's April 1st or it's February 28th, it'll just ignore this and not apply it. It's really, really smart. So now we're just up to 13 records instead of 640. So yeah, for those people who are exporting their pricing out of Acumatica, going into Excel, doing calculations, importing back in, I'm sure you're all too used to this process. There's just a better way to do it. Now you may be thinking, oh, what if we customize? Probably shouldn't. Customizations are often very easy in the short term. And then when Acumatica changes and is upgraded, or when your developer who wrote the customization leaves, how do you keep that maintained and updated? And so that's why we really recommend going with an ISV supported solution, because then the maintenance of that pricing functionality is all in the hands of us. This is the only product we sell for the entire Acumatica platform. So our whole team is dedicated to keeping this running. And so you do not have to worry about pricing in general once you move with Rockton Pricing Management. And so not only can we help you transform your pricing into not only become guarantee that you're profitable and just in general take much of the manual labor out of it, we can also future-proof your pricing, because we're going to be here to serve you for as long as your company exists, and we'll handle all this stuff forever. Whereas a customization is likely not going to exist in 5 or 10 years, or will need to be completely rewritten just because of how fast cloud ERP moves. So going back to our example, we were at 640 records. Some people do quantity breaks. So say if you buy up to 25 units, you get a price. 25 to 50 units is some price, and then 100 or more units is even cheaper, right? So you want to break it by the quantity ordered. Manually, you're going to have to go ahead and make each price list per quantity break. So with 4 quantity breaks, we're up to 2,500 records, right? Whereas with Rockton Pricing Management, again, we just set up one rule. Now, at a certain point, you're probably reaching about here. I'm sure many of our audience members today can resonate. You might be managing pricing this way. In fact, I would say about 80% of the demos I'm doing on a weekly basis, this is what I look at their Excel and it looks like this. And yes, there is a better way. You do not have to do it this way. You can see how quickly by just adding a couple rules and a couple exceptions and manually doing those rules and calculations in a tool like Excel, or having your salespeople manage it some other way, we've now turned just 10 simple items from a hardware store into 12,000 records. There is not enough time in the day to manage this. You cannot hire a big enough team to manage this in a effective way. And so at a certain point, pricing management just becomes a necessity. You're either going to have to rethink the way you do business and just have a really simple one and done price list, or you can use a tool like Rockton Pricing Management to break out all of that, all of your pricing, and have it automate so you don't have to come in here and worry about the price being wrong or right. So to recap, let's talk about some real life examples that you can use Rockton Pricing Management where one rule makes a lot more sense than computing a bunch of other questions. Sorry, I was just reading that you have a question in the chat. I'm going to get to questions in just one moment once I wrap up this section of the presentation here. So don't worry, I'm going to get all your questions answered in just a moment here. But one example in the real life is that you might have a shipping tax on a region. Say it's in New Jersey, you have to charge a regulatory fee or something like that, but it's not for any other region. Traditionally, you would take all of your pricing that exists, you duplicate it, make a second Excel sheet, and then that Excel sheet would be titled New Jersey. And then you would go ahead and add a 3% adjustment to all of those columns and then copy that over. And so however many items you have or how many records and prices you're managing already, you're just going to double that number. With RPM, we just add a conditional. If ship to location is New Jersey, add 3%. Else, do nothing. It's really that simple. And so now we're up to one record extra instead of doubling all of our records. Tariffs. So tariffs start tomorrow on Chinese imports, let's say. And that happens to be screwdrivers in this example. Those all come from China. So traditionally, you'd have to go through the chaos. You have 1,000 items, right? You're going to go and look, which one's a screwdriver? Oh, this one is, this one isn't, this one isn't. Pull out those 14 screwdrivers. Go ahead and mark those up 60%. But then tomorrow when that tariff goes away or is changed, or now it's 80% or it's 150% or it's zero, who knows, right? You're going to have to go and redo all that calculation. With RPM, and when I say RPM, it's Rockton Pricing Management. With RPM, you just add a rule. If item class is screwdriver, or if country of origin is China, add 60%. And then if anything changes, it's very easy to just go in there and you can click inactivate on that one adjustment. And so if you have 100 rules and then one more rule at the end, you can just turn off that one rule without affecting those 100 rules down the line. So the rest of your pricing, you don't have to worry about, and you have to go back and recalculate all that stuff, right? You just turn off this one rule and all of your pricing is automatically updated. Because again, we don't store prices, we just store rules. At the time of order entry, when you add a line item in Acumatica, it makes a call to our engine and returns a price. Another one that's popular is we actually handle units of measure, especially for things like copper or steel. So if you have items where, say, a hammer has 4 ounces of steel in it, but then a nail has so let's say 16 ounces of would be more appropriate for a hammer. So let's say 16 ounces of steel is in a hammer, but then a nail only has 1 ounce of steel. Okay. Then in that case, we need to do a unit of measure conversion in order to figure out how much steel and then how to price it, because steel is a volatile item, right? And so what you're going to have to do is go ahead and figure out what's the weight of steel in each item and then do a calculation for that. It's really complicated and chaotic, and I'm sure some of you are doing that today. With RPM, we just use the units of measure formula. And so we're able to just pull it in and say, hey, this item has, 16 ounces. Okay. Price per steel, which we have a formula that's updating every single day or every hour as frequently as you'd like. Price of steel right now is $50 a ton. Okay, so then we'll do that calculation and get you what the price for that one nail should be, and it will be different by a factor of 16 from the hammer based on how much of that metal was contained in that item. And so if you're doing, we have like distributors who do chemicals, and so oil is a one that's changing all the time, and so we can get the volatile price of oil, commodities like seeds and fruits, copper for wires. All of these are things that we have customers today who are using a live commodity update and then doing a unit of formula conversion in order to get their pricing, so that they don't have to come in and update their pricing every day. We just have calculations that are all automated behind the scene, and tomorrow when copper updates, all of their wire on their website also updates too. It's pretty cool. And without RPM, it is just more chaos. And then, of course, let's say you want to do, you're getting outsold by a competitor on certain items. You've got a bunch of stacked math. You got to start that all over in order to fix those margins. Whereas for us, we can just go ahead and pull out the profit and the overhead, right? The overhead is something that's not negotiable, but the profit of 32%. And what if we make it only 20 for nail pullers, right? Because we're getting eaten alive there, but not so low that we're selling it at a loss. So that's the kind of things that we can do with Rockton Pricing Management. So if there's one page I can get you to pay attention to today, I would really love you to take a look at this screen. This is the most important part, and this is how we are literally going to guarantee that you are more profitable. We can guarantee that your company's in profit, and I'm not joking, and that's not a catchphrase, and that's not just a sales pitch. We can literally do that. And how we do that, and how many companies don't do that, is we separate the independent layers of pricing. Instead of just taking your cost, saying, I want to sell it for a 32% markup, and then making that the final price, right? You need to think about things like your overhead, how much it costs to ship things, the tariffs, all these things. And so what we do is we start with one list. Generally, that's cost stored inside of Acumatica, but it can be any one list. We want one source of truth. Then we apply a landed cost. How much does it cost to get all that stuff into your warehouse? You're going to do things like freight, for example. Okay, so your freight is one adjustment. That way, when your freight changes, you just go in there and change that one adjustment, that one math rule, right? Then you apply your overhead. How much does it cost to keep the warehouse open, the lights on, to pay your employees, that sort of stuff? Make that its separate percentage or whole cost or whatever it is, right? Then apply your quantity breaks, like we talked about. Based on volume, you might pay more or less. And so we'll set that as a separate rule, so that if the quantity breaks change down the road, we just edit that one rule. We look at our competitor pricing. We set minimums and maximums. Cool, that's a separate rule. Taxes, again, separated because the taxes are going to change based on all the stuff above. Discounts and promotions, again, those should be calculated after we think about how much it costs to get that item into our warehouse, to pay our employees, to pack it, and to ship it. Ship zones, loyalty tiers, you get the idea. And so after we do all of those independently as its own adjustment, at the very end, we are now going to apply a profit margin. And this is where you can insert your confidence, is because we've broken out each of these adjustments and waited till the very end to apply a profit margin. Now we have a number to play with. If this profit margin is 32%, I can get it all the way down to 0. And yeah, we'll be breaking even, but we will be selling items considering all of these factors, and our lights will stay on, our warehouse will stay open, our employees will stay fed. It is really, really important, and you would be shocked at the number of calls I get on a weekly basis where they just aren't doing this. They simply aren't. They are just saying, here's our cost, here's our profit margin, here's our price, and they really forget about this stuff, and it's really easy to look over. And then, of course, once you get there, we can do other things. So once you got that final price, your profit margin, everything, then let's do things like commissions, rebates, royalties. All of those things are other things we can calculate, because a commission or a rebate or a royalty, those are just a calculation that's driven on some condition, right? If this salesperson is a seller, add a commission of this amount to the commission account. If it's this customer buying this item from this vendor, add 5% of the selling price to this vendor rebate account. Things like that we can also handle. And so effectively, if you can tell us the data driving it, we can make a rule and make pricing happen. So any level of pricing can be driven by selecting customer, item, any attribute you want, dates, location, custom value, really anything you can dream of. If you can speak it in plain English words, we can make it happen as a rule. And of course, there are finally, we have more. We can, of course, do buy one, get one, unlimited discounts, unlimited promotions. Every single one of these adjustments can also be tracked to the general ledger in detail. So that's how we handle things like the commission. Your commission we track to a general ledger commission account. And of course, I want to save it looks like I'm about 5 minutes here. So I'm going to give you a quick demo inside of Acumatica so you can see how simple and easy it works. Here's a quick visual of what it looks like. Our engine, you throw us a customer and an item and maybe some other data. Our engine goes to work and we throw out a price along with some general ledger account adjustments. And so now I'm going to switch my sharing screen to my demo here. And this demo will just take about a minute. All right, we're going to go to this one. All right, you should now be seeing my screen. This is Acumatica, a sales order. I'm sure we're all too familiar. Now, here's how you use Rockton Pricing Management with Acumatica. You create your sales order, you add your customer, and now I'm going to go here and add my line item. So I'll go ahead, add a line item. I'll pick an item. Let's go ahead and pick this Lego set I like to use. I'll go ahead and give it a quantity. That's going to drive our pricing to, right? And as soon as I hit tab and tab off that field, you'll see right away, this price is calculated. And that concludes our demo. You've now seen Rockton Pricing Management in action. It is literally business as usual. It is fully integrated with Acumatica. Once all the setup is done, it happens magically behind the scenes, populating this field, the unit price field, with the right price. We do have 2 buttons, so you can see how that price was calculated. We have the diagnostics. This will give you a text log of what it looked at, the rules it looked at. And so I'm just going to flash this really quick, but it's a big block of text. So this will let you look into how that happened. More simply, though, we can also see the sales line details. If I click this button, this little pencil to switch between the grid and the form, I can see the sales line details. And down here, I can see all the adjustments that went into making that price happen. I started by taking the cost and marking up 28%. That was an amount of $70, and it was tracked to this general ledger account and credit account. So you can track to any pair of GL accounts. And that's an optional thing. You don't have to. So you can see this customer discount and this ship to. I didn't. They were a silver customer, so they got $32 off. They were shipping to New York State. Check this out. If I switch addresses, you'll see it says New York. Yep, so that worked. Because it's New York, that adjustment applied. And that wouldn't have applied if the ship to was a different state. And then I also did commission, and the commission would be tracked to your commissions account, and we'll accrue that. So cool, that is my whole demo. I am now going to stop sharing my screen. That's how simple and easy this works. I want to make sure I have time to answer your questions. The first question I saw on there is, can Rockton also handle complex sales commission calculations? I'm sure that was before I got there in my demo, but yes, absolutely. Because we have the data necessary, which is basically who is the salesperson selling the item, and then what was the sale. So they sold this much on this date for this much. So we have all of that data. You just track that 3% or 5% or whatever the commission account is to that salesperson's commission account. So no matter how complicated it is, if it's only on green items, cool, you set up that commission. If green item, salesperson equals John, etc. So yeah, no problem, no matter how complicated the commission is. Maybe tariffs will happen, maybe not. That's making data analysis and financial calculations so tricky these days. I 100% agree. And that's what's so cool about this is that if, say that this 28% adjustment was actually 28% tariff, in the setup screen, I can go to this adjustment and there's one button that says inactivate, and I just click it and then it's inactive. And so like when that tariff changes, it's really easy to go and change one rule, but then maybe this, and this didn't change, right? Because they're not a tariff. And so it's really easy to just pull in or out that tariff without having to go and redo the calculation. And that's where we're saving you time, is that when that tariff, yes, I agree, the tariff is changing and maybe it happens and maybe it doesn't, but you have to do that calculation, right? You have to have your sales prices ready in case that calculation happens. And so we will help that, and we will automate that and make sure that you are set up for success, because it can be date driven. We can also say, hey, apply tariff of 60% only starting October 1st. So if they place an order on September 30th, it doesn't, but then at midnight, it automatically kicks in. That's all the rule type of stuff we can set up, because we are not storing prices, we're storing rules. It's really, really powerful when you switch your mind from thinking of fixed numbers to rules. It can be anything you want. Can you track discounts or fees to separate general ledger accounts? Yes, each independent layer of pricing can and probably should be tracked to an individual general ledger account. Very good question. And then poll-wise, it looks like many people are saying complex pricing rules across customers and items. And that's a great thing with RPM. We handle that type of stuff, is that if it's complicated because of item or because of customer, Those are all data points we have. If it's this customer and this item, they have to get this special price. Since we know the customer, we know the item at the time you're creating the order, it's no problem for our engine. You just feed us that data. You tell us what math you want to happen. We make that math happen. Now I'm out of time. I do not want to run into anyone else's sessions. Now I cannot believe how many people we've had join. This is my busiest session ever. So thank you so much. I really, truly appreciate each and every one of you who took time out of the day. And please write us an email. And I would love to connect with you if I can, if we can be of any help. My email is sales@rocktonsoftware.com. And you can go ahead and just reach us out there, and I'm happy to schedule a demo. I'm going to just flash the screen up here, and I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Carol so that you guys can take a screenshot or write this down, but I don't want you to be left without this information. So please, I'd love to hear more about what you're struggling with pricing-wise in Acumatica. Go ahead and check out our resources, and love to see how we can help. So thank you, and I'll turn it back over to Carol. That's all I have for you today.
Thanks for joining. We'll see you at the expo booth or at the next session.